Hi, I'm Ross from Airsoft, and today we'll be taking a look at the Krytac MKIII series. So, a very familiar brand to all of us in the airsoft industry is Krytac. They have been known for a long time to produce very high-end replicas right out of the box with their Mark I and Mark II series, and we now have our hands on the new Mark III series. And right here before me, I have three models of the Mark III. I have their PDW, their CRB, and their SBR. They also make an LMG, which I will be looking at separately in a different video. For the sake of this, we will be taking a look at these three models of Krytacs. So to start, we'll go over some of the externals here, specifically the differences between the three models. So the main difference that you're gonna see between your three models of Krytac here are the stocks and your handguard / outer barrel length. On the PDW here, we have this collapsible stock, which with the push of a button back here will allow you to slide your stock out. And then your battery goes right into the butt cap back here, and it can fit a small brick style 11-1 in there, which is what they recommend you run with these guys. And then the PDW has a 5-inch handguard here, making it the short rifle out of the three. Moving on to our CRB here, we have a pretty low profile crane stock, as you can see here, and that is going to be the same on our SBR as well. And then we have a 10-inch M-LOK handguard, and that is the length difference for the CRB. And then finally, the SBR here, as I said, it has the same stock as the CRB. We are now working with a 13-inch handguard. So this is going to be your longest rifle out of the three. They also chrono slightly differently, but we will talk about that once we get to our chrono section. So to continue on the externals, and these externals are going to be the same across the board for all three of these platforms here. So we'll start with the receiver here, which is made of aircraft grade aluminum alloy. It is a great feeling replica that has some weight to it and is built really well construction wise. You get these nice angled foregrips here, which I think fit very comfortably in the hand. You have this enlarged trigger guard here that works nice with gloves, as well as their flat trigger, which is a licensed CMC adjustable trigger that they have. They have this nice flared mag well here that makes it easy to insert and remove your magazines, as well as an ambidextrous mag release. The ambidextrous mag release is a nice touch, however, it is very sensitive. I know that when we ran this guy at Black Site this past weekend, we were dropping mags a lot. It is just a little bit too easy to hit when moving up with your gear and stuff. Something to keep in mind is the ambidextrous mag release is very sensitive. So just keep that in mind when operating your Krytac Mark III. You also have an ambidextrous selector switch, as well as an enlarged bolt release, as well as this flared charging handle. On all three, we have this M-LOK handguard that is CNC'd from T6 aluminum, and as I said, they do come in the three different lengths depending on the model of Krytac that you pick up. And once you remove the orange tip, you'll be met with 14mm CCW threads, which make it easy to attach any sort of attachments. The CRB we have in the middle here, we currently have a Acetec Bifrost on. And then all of these replicas come with a 150 round mid-cap magazine from Krytac. They also do come with flip-up sights, as well as a couple of M-LOK rail attachments. So you really get everything you need out of the box to kind of outfit your rifle for a day at the field. So that kind of does it for all of the externals of the replicas. So now we're going to take a look at internally what is going on inside these guys here. So the Krytac Mark IIIs are a V2 standard style gearbox with 8mm high performance bearings. They've actually upgraded this gearbox to fit aftermarket ECUs better. In the past, the Mark IIs and Mark Is were a little bit more proprietary to the Krytac parts and internals, but with this new kind of design they've done with their gearbox, it leaves you with a bit extra room for aftermarket trigger boards and other electronics you would like to add to your gearbox. So that is a cool design upgrade that they added. The gearboxes have a lightweight ported full metal piston as well. And then these guys do come with an enhanced FET system inside already. And that's gonna be providing you with faster trigger response, low battery protection, partial active braking, and gear strip protection. These guys also have a micro switch E-trigger inside of them already. So when you pull the trigger, you can hear that micro switch click. They have a 30K Neo high torque motor for minimal lag during gameplay, as well as a improved rotary hop-up, which is now in a clear plastic. They did change the design of this hop-up slightly The Krytac hop-ups are something that we know have been tried and true and good for a long time, so it'll be interesting to see how the changes they've done affect the performance long-term on these rifles. And then your replica does come pre-installed with a Dean's or T-plug battery connector in the stock. And that kind of does it for all of the internals of the Krytacs. So we'll go over to the Chrono and we will talk about that while we chrono these, because we did get some interesting results. To begin with, the Krytac PDW. They claim from the factory that this guy should be shooting 345 to 370 FPS with a 0.2 gram BB. When chronoing it, I had it firing at a maximum of 335. So we are sitting 10 FPS under what Krytac kind of advertises for that. So then taking a look at the Krytac CRB. Krytac says should be shooting between 400 and 425. However, this one we had the biggest drop. It was only chronoing at 389 max. So I mean, we're hitting 390 and it's supposed to be at a 400 FPS replica. So not super happy with where that FPS is sitting at, but you know, we can always swap the spring out and give us a little bit more. And finally, the SBR, they claim 405 FPS to 430, and I actually had it shooting right around 420 FPS. So pretty much exactly where we want it to be at. Bottom line is all three of these guns are shooting great. Both of these are great for outdoor, and the PDW, you could even run indoor with where it's shooting at right now FPS-wise. But something to keep in mind is that FPS on the website is not always going to be accurate to what these guys are actually shooting out of the box. And depending on some slight adjustments you're doing, where your hop-up's set at, and so forth, you're going to have a variation there as well. So just something to keep in mind with these guys. Now to get to some of our pros and cons. So the main pro that I see for these guys is they are great out-of-the-box replicas. As I said before, we know that Krytacs are a quality build and construction that will last you for quite a long time. I know people who are still running Mark 1s even till today, and they love them still. So all I can say is I hope that the Mark 3s hold up to that quality that I expect from Krytac. So far, they seem to have. We had a couple of issues with the CRB here, which I will talk about in a second. But overall, I mean, for an out-of-the-box AEG with no upgrades done internally, it performs very well. It is something that I'm impressed with, and I think you can run at most milsims and, you know, have a blast all day. But that being said, I do have to talk about some of the cons that we had with these replicas, because we did have some problems with the CRB here while at Black Site. The first issue that I had already mentioned was the ambi mag release. That ambidextrous mag release just kept dumping mags on us, and it was definitely a bit frustrating.
Open?
Dropped your mag.
Christ.
What I would probably do is maybe just replace that ambidextrous mag release lever there with something that's maybe a little bit more low profile, or even just removing the ambidextrous in general. Obviously, you're going to be doing a little bit of modification to your stock replica, so if it's not that big a deal to you, it's not that big a deal. But just something we noticed was how loose that mag release was, and it really wanted to drop our mags out at the worst times. Moving on to another feature that is pretty well known with Krytac is their lack of a quick change spring system. So their gearboxes are a quick change gearbox. However, the bodies are not quick change. So I am not able to simply remove my spring from my buffer tube and swap it fast. I do have to take the entire gearbox out. That's how it is with the Mark 1 and Mark 2 Krytacs. Unfortunately, that is just how they produce the replicas. Once you have the spring that you're happy with in there, it's usually not a big deal, but I always do like that little bit of adjustability that you can get when going to a field and swapping springs and being able to, you know, really get the performance out of your replica that you want. Having one less customizable feature for the player, in my opinion, is a bad thing. But as I said, it's been this way with all the Krytacs, so it's kind of a known feature of the replicas. Another issue that we had at Black Site over the weekend was our motor connectors coming loose. We actually had once here at the shop while chronoing it, the motor connectors slip off, and then while at Black Site, both of the motor connectors actually came off of the motor, which, you know, put the gun down for an amount of time. Thankfully, we bring tools on the field so we can quickly fix that and get it back up and running, and it's really not a major deal, but it is a little bit frustrating to be out on the field playing and your gun stops working abruptly. So just something to keep in mind is that if you lose power while running it, you can always check your motor grip contacts there. It is a super easy fix. Sometimes they slip off, but that is a gripe we had, was the motor contacts just coming loose on us while playing. And then the last thing I have to say about these Krytacs is with the stock and the battery attachment. Your wiring for where your battery goes in is very short. And depending on how you have your battery adjusted in your stock here, if you fling it out too fast, you could always pull out your battery connectors. So just make sure that you are being careful when wiring your battery and moving your stock in and out, specifically on the CRB and SBR. You do have the chance of accidentally pulling your connectors out of your battery, which similarly to pulling the motor connectors out, it's not a big issue, but it is annoying. The last thing I want to say about the cons is the lack of a front sling mount. We have one mounted here just on the M-LOK rail. It'd be nice to see a QD sling mount somewhere up forward on the replica, but it's not the biggest deal ever. So that concludes the pros and cons. I think that these are great replicas that have a few issues and quirks, but at the end of the day, it is nothing major. There are no deal breakers for me as far as the cons go on these replicas. So we actually have some gameplay using the Krytac CRB at AMS Black Site this past weekend, so you guys can check out the performance of these guys right now.
That's not clear.
They're pushing.
Where's the bandage?
All right, and that concludes our review for the Krytac Mark III series. If you have any questions about the Krytac series here or anything else Airsoft related, you can always leave them down in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It really helps us out. It helps us keep making videos like this and bringing you guys information about new products on the market, as well as just fun gameplay stuff that we enjoy. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you leave a comment, make sure you like, make sure you share it to your friends, and we will see you in the next one.